Hi, I'm AJ Bieber, and welcome to today's broadcast. And the title of the broadcast is Fire Up Your February. And I have a very special guest here with me today, my friend and love poet, Suhail Mirza from London in the UK. And he's here with me. I hope you can see us here and testing us out at the same time. Looks like you can see us. And for those of you who don't know me, I just want to take a moment and introduce myself. My name's AJ Bieber. I'm here in Dallas, Texas. In fact, this is my office. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a published author. And I'm a public speaker and founder and creator of a program called Ignite the Light, which is a program for women to tap into the greatest aspects of themselves and find that passion and that true love and really become intimate with themselves in order to share that in a relationship. And so I teach a lot about polarity and masculine and feminine energy and being able to connect to that divine love source that resides within all of us. And years ago, I had the privilege of meeting Suhail through Facebook. We've never met in person, have we?
Not yet.
And not yet. And it has been such a beautiful journey. I'd like to share a little bit about Suhail and kind of give you a little overview of things. Basically, today I'd like to ask Suhail some questions. He is a love poet, so he taps into that greater stream of consciousness of the divine feminine and masculine within us all. And he's also going to bring in some practical applications that we can all use and implement in our lives right now if you're feeling maybe a little disconnected or perhaps feeling a lot of fear. There's a mass consciousness right now of a lot of fear, so much pain right now in our world from this, like I said, just really difficult time. And so we know that in order to overcome fear, it takes divine love. And that's really the experience that we want to share here today with all of you. And so it's my great honor again and privilege to introduce Suhail. Suhail is a former attorney and amateur boxer who turned love poet. And many call him a modern day Rumi. So Suhail, I want to bring you on here and have you share with us, how did you go from a place of amateur boxer and attorney to love poet? I mean, that journey is just incredible. I'd love for you to share some of that with us.
Yeah, I just want to dispel the idea that I was an amateur boxer to fend off my clients. My clients were generally quite happy when I was a lawyer, just in case people think there's a connection there. The journey to love poetry is clearly not a linear one from that sort of background. I was involved in a business as well. But really the path started nearly a decade ago within a journey of pain and heartache and experiencing a dark night of the soul. And when I reached that point, the rational mind, I was a lawyer by training, obviously, was not sufficient to help me find something that I could cling to that was permanent. I could always fight my way and get myself to be positive. That's okay. And it's only when I turned to spirit and focused on a path of knowledge to really reorientate where my heart was, not just my head, where my heart was. So I took the path of knowledge to learn more about traditional wisdom. I took a path of action to translate that knowledge, to purify the heart within, to forgive myself, to find that true essence. And then completely unbeknownst to me, we had become friends by this stage on Facebook. And in 2017, I started writing poetry. I didn't plan to do that. And the poetry found its way on Facebook. There were some really beautiful souls, including, of course, you, that were really wonderful and laudatory about that. And that emboldened me to write more and to publish it. And the book was published, The Flames of Love. It's the first in a trilogy. And I've been really, really honored to get the feedback from people around the world who've read the book and feel that it's touched them, whether it's in a capacity as people in a relationship or people who are facing pain and darkness on their own. So, thanks to your light shining the way along the path, I took that journey from that world to the more mystical world.
That is one incredible journey. And you said the path of knowledge, and you said the path to the heart. Can you speak a little bit of that, of your own personal experience with that?
Yeah, sure. So we live in a world, as you say, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of darkness, and we've compressed our world. You know, it's a beautiful world, and we have to embrace the wonderful things that we have, the technology, the advances that we've got, but we've compressed the world to limit it to only what we can measure and understand. But there's a greater world, a more than human world, and that path, it was rigorous, because obviously as a legal background, I'm not just going to accept something that someone tells me. So I went on this path, 500 books, great teachers around the world, and who helped me to see that actually if you look up and look around and look within, there is a unity in the face of all the multiplicity that we see. And that allowed me to then have the confidence that actually I can tap into something eternal and something within me that transcends all the vicissitudes that we face every day. You know, the pains that we face, the little voice that hankers in our mind, all the ups and downs, the grief, the loss, etc. And that then took me on to actually, I was carrying some baggage from the past where perhaps I needed to have faith in me and the world around me. And that's when I took the path of action. I confronted those things for me to reclaim that divine masculinity, to confront those things where I had let myself down, and then eventually to forgive myself. So that's where that evolution took place in terms of, it's not an easy journey if everyone has been through that dark night of the soul, but there is great reward if you are steadfast.
Amen. And so you talk about divine masculine, and then you really write about the divine feminine from that perspective. So I'm curious, how do you tap into that stream of consciousness and really be able to speak from that point of view? Because your poems are so incredibly romantic, and we're going to have a moment where Suhail's actually at the end going to share and recite one of the poems for us. But your poems are so beautiful, and they touch the heart so deeply because, like I said in the foreword of your book, which I was so privileged, thank you very much for allowing me to be part of that and sharing that you really help all of us tap into the divine masculine and feminine lover that is within each one of us. So how would you explain that from a divine masculine perspective of celebrating the feminine and where that comes from?
So there's a philosophical basis behind it, and a practical things that I do to tap into that. The philosophical basis comes from the fact that what we believe and the glasses that we put on to look at the world, our worldview really, really matters. It's really important. So, you know, it's not something we can take lightly. And hence that path of knowledge led me to understand. So in all the literature of traditional wisdom, it is replete with the idea that this whole universe that we see, all of creation, was instantiated through the divine feminine, through the Sophia, through the wisdom. And it uses that feminine article very, very consistently. And that taught me that actually the feminine, the divine feminine, must be the energy that we've gained sustenance from as a divine masculine. So that was where I placed it philosophically, and that allowed me to tap into that heart place that I talk about in the poetry. Because at the end of the day, all wisdom is, at the end of the day, it's a recollection. We already know this. Our heart has all of this within us. We just need to break the vessels of it open to access that.
Yeah,
and that's the vital thing that we need to do, and have the courage of that. Whatever's happened in our past, whether we've been let down by other people or we've let ourselves down. And I take practical steps as a poet to tap into that surrender. I call it the strength of surrender, because surrender sounds like a weak, passive place. It's not. You need immense strength and courage to be able to do that and to cast off the veils to see who the real person is. So one of the things that I do, and I encourage that with everybody that I speak with and I work with and who reads the poetry, is that I have a ritual that allows me to tap into that. I do that every morning. It can take 15 minutes, it can take 45 minutes. And it's comprised of a few simple steps. It begins with meditation or prayer or contemplation, whatever works for you. So a connection to something greater than yourself. That's the first step that we begin with. We then move, and I then take time to give gratitude for the things that I have in my life. My very next breath, I give gratitude for our world, the country, our nation, all the things that we're privileged, family, friends, etc. And then the third step is visualization. So I spend my time in the imagination to look ahead. Where do I want to be? What do I want to create? What do I want to co-create? And that can be a year ahead or 5 years ahead. And I see those pictures so that they become real, imbued with the passion and the color that reality consists of. So those are the first three steps: meditation or prayer, gratitude, and visualization. And then I take the steps to write down 10 things that I was grateful for that happened yesterday, to give the immediacy of what happened yesterday and gather up that into our heart today, because we tend to forget the good things that happen really, really quickly. So if we can just write even the mundane things, it shows that there is an abundance around us. And finally, I tap into a text, what I call a text. For me, it's reading. As you can see, I love books. People have bought me Kindles over the years, but I'm afraid I still love the old-fashioned books. And I read an uplifting text every day and every morning. It can be just for a few minutes. And a text can mean listening to some beautiful music. It can be looking at art, something that takes us out of the ordinary. Those 5 steps, I find, and particularly reading the texts of traditional wisdom, open my heart, and the poems then flow from there. And that allows me to tap into that divine masculine energy, which is designed to honor the divine feminine.
So do you hear an inner voice within when you're writing your poetry? Is it more experiential? How do you experience it? That's my curiosity.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely experiential, and it's not something that I can demand or create a formula for. So for me, the poems that you've seen here and the ones that I have now already written for the second and third volumes of the trilogy, one of which will be dedicated to the divine feminine specifically. The poems arise literally, the way I see them is if my heart is open, if I'm in that place of surrender, if I'm in that place of connection, then normally a word or 2 words appear, which are usually the final stanza, at the end of the final stanza of the poem. They appear seemingly randomly, and literally the poems are then written within 2 minutes. I just literally write down. Sometimes that can happen when before lockdown, when I was traveling into London on a train. I would have to jump off, sit down and write the poem then, otherwise I would lose that. I couldn't wait for it to come back later. It would come in that moment, and that's how it tapped in, because the texts allowed me to transcend the moment.
So the text, in terms of you get those couple stanzas, a line, and then for you just come into that stream of consciousness, and it comes through you, and it's an experiential. You're feeling it, you're sensing it, you're hearing it on some level.
Yep, I can hear the words, the first 2 words, and then the rest just literally, it's as if a voice is speaking to me. And I think the part of that whole ritual is designed for us to trust our intuition, because especially from a legal background, we're in here a lot, and that's fine. You need an attorney to be at the top of their game and mastering all their brief. But in order to be able to access who we are as human beings, our true disposition, which is the name of one of the poems, we have to access what's in here and learn to trust that intuition, because that wisdom is never wrong, in my view. Whatever comes out in those moments is the truth. We may fear that truth, but it is the truth.
And you just explained to us that really comes from the Sophia, the divine feminine. So now I get a little better understanding of your ritual and how those 2 parts come together. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is beautiful.
No, and that's very gracious of you. And I think everyone can do that. I think a male or female, anyone can do that, and to tap into that energy. And I think where we are today, we've become a plastic world where mechanics and the surface are now exalted. But actually something deeper, for me, it was a reclamation of what was chivalric. There's a sense of chivalry in true divine masculinity. And I wanted to come that, despite all the temptations and the easy fixes that the world offers, the true divine masculine will look for that idea to be a knight, to be chivalrous. And for that, he has to understand that he has to have that adoration and bring that energy to the divine feminine whose energy surrounds him all the time if he's willing to open his heart. And I think, I've had the honor of reading your book, of course, You and I, and know your work. And it's a mirror, what I'm writing, it's a mirror of what you write about. And it comes easily because the strength of being a warrior, you have to mix the ardor of a warrior with the passion of a poet.
That is beautiful. I love that description. Thank you. That's incredible. And I agree. I think there is a mirror there of when you talk about divinely masculine, I don't see myself as a divine feminine. I see myself as an earthly woman. But I know that when I tap into I wouldn't say that higher realm, it's within us, like you explained, and it is the mature feminine, and that's the way I like to explain it. But yet it comes from such a divine source. So you talk about chivalry for a man and bringing that in and how chivalrous they are for the woman. Then the woman, in my opinion, it's that dignity that she brings. It's that celebration of her beauty and all of the ways that society has dimmed that for women and really just objectified women. And in so many ways, the relationship between the masculine and feminine over our years has really been damaged. And there's been a lack of trust in relationships. And we see that in our world. And so to be able to tap into that greater source of the masculine and feminine within all of us, which is that flame of love, and receive that love within in order, I believe, to share that with another person in a relationship it's a powerful, powerful place to be. And so I love that you're single, correct?
Yes, I am.
Single, eligible bachelor. Beautiful. You do this ritual to share your poetry. When you hear the poetry, it opens your heart in such a beautiful way. And you talked about how one of the reasons you love poetry so much is because it's a heart-opening experience for yourself. And then it's a heart-opening experience for those who get to read that and hear that.
That's what it's designed to do, because at the end of the day, it taps into a unity, because traditional wisdom teaches us that there is but one light, but it's refracted in a beautiful, unique way by each of us. Yes. And if you're able to understand that, then the poetry taps into that same source. And I think, again, traditional wisdom teaches us that the divine manifests and unveils its energy most fulsomely in beauty. And the most fulsome way of that beauty is in the face of woman. So once you understand that, then it's very, very easy to see actually where that balance and that complementarity resides. And I think, you say in some of in your book and your work that, you can use poetry as a tool to ignite that flame between couples, or even if you are single, in preparation for the person that you are hoping to meet.
Absolutely, because just in listening to your story, it was so beautiful to picture now when I read those words, because my husband and I've told you before, and I know I've shared on Facebook with other people, that one of our rituals is we take a bath together every Sunday night, and it's our ritual to give to one another, and that's what we focus on. And sometimes we'll read the poetry, and we've read your poetry to one another, and it opens up the heart in just this different space that you don't have to do the ritual that you went through to get to that space, but you can literally just tap in by reading the poetry out loud and feeling that space within the heart. And to me, that's such a gift, and we enjoy it. We love that time together, and really what that time is for is to serve one another. And that's what a lot of your words, your work, and everything it is that you've done. And so thank you so much. I mean, being single and being able to experience that love, it's the same love.
Yeah, absolutely.
That we're all tapping into.
Yeah, and I think people, what part of the work that I do in the first part of the book, of the poetry book, is to honor exactly what you're talking about, is that what's beautiful within us, irrespective of what has happened to us in our pasts. whatever happens, we can rationalize it, we can explain it, we can find causal links for it, and those are really important, perhaps for closure, for those who perhaps have lost trust or those who have lost faith in themselves. But the poetry speaks to that deeper essence, which is always beautiful, undimmed by the vicissitudes of this world. And therefore, if we're able to tap into that, as you just explained that you and your husband are doing, that allows us to go to that primordial beauty, which is eternal.
And it is the divine masculine and feminine. It's the lovers. The name of Suhail's book is called Flames of Love. And I have a little bit of what I wrote that I can read here. Give me just a moment and I'll pull it up. I said, Suhail's poetry is written for the lover inside all of us. Suhail has journeyed to the secret garden where the divine masculine and feminine rejoice in union, ignited by the celebration of their love, and has returned to share his poetic findings here in the Flames of Love. Using the language of the lovers, Suhail's poetry conveys the secret garden is not some ephemeral fairy tale. In other words, it's not out there somewhere to be found someday. It's within every one of us, and which resides in all of us, where a great love story lives in order to ignite our own love story. And in my experience of Suhail's writing, I continue, every time I open that book, I continue to expand into the appreciation of my own divine masculine, because it's being shared from that beautiful divine masculine space, which is protection, which is cherishing the feminine, which is that chivalry. So whether we've had an experience of it or not in our lives, we know it exists when we can look at the poets and the artists and these beautiful people like Suhail who can tap into that. And through this masculine, I found healing and anointing for the scars of my own earthly relationships. And this is where I'm reminded that the true flames of love reside. And I know that this love is eternal and can never be extinguished. And that to me is the biggest piece of this, because if we look for confidence or love outside of us, then it's merely a transaction. It's not really experiencing what love is meant to be. And so through Suhail's honoring of the divine feminine, then for me, it allowed me to find safety and permission to honor my own feminine with every reading, strengthening the relationship in my own external. So his poetry is more than words. And for those of you who are open, it's an opportunity to reignite with the beloved within you. That's the divine masculine and feminine. That's the source of all possibility and creation that all, I believe, and you believe too, Suhail, that all of nature is connected to. And if we just tap in and maybe use some of those practical applications that you just shared with us, which are incredible, then we can all experience that. And so I wrote that for those who are open to reunite with your beloved over and over and over again, nourished by Suhail's translation, this book will spark your imagination and the infinite space where lovers' passion cannot be contained. Burning in purity, in passion, and possibility with these flames of love. And that's where I just want to thank you, Suhail, for the most beautiful gift that you've given to this world.
Well, I'm very moved and honored by you. And I want to take this opportunity to say that I have been very blessed on my journey. What people don't realize is that my poetry started at one of the darkest points in my life externally. And I was blessed. I believe in angels. Now, let me qualify that. I'm not talking about all the cherubims that we might see. An angel in traditional wisdom is an emissary, a messenger of a higher truth. And I had angels in my life, several of them, who recognized the poetry and really supported it when I couldn't really see myself. And you are and were one of them. So I'm deeply honored to you.
Well, thank you. Well, it's been my honor to get to know you. And I want to share where I know they can purchase your book on Amazon, correct? The Flames of Love. But then also your website, and I'll let you share your website so people can go there and you can actually hear Suhail recite the poetry, which he's going to do here in a moment. So you can just experience that place for ourselves, because it has, I mean, I hear your story of darkness. I know that's really a lot of my story of darkness and not trusting men, and we've talked about this several times. And when we know that we can go to a place within our own hearts and access it through poetry or art or all these other places in life where this divine love exists, which is, I believe, everywhere, right?
Absolutely.
But it's such a gift. So can you share with us where your, first of all, your website where people can go and listen to your poetry?
Yeah, sure. That's www.suhailmirzapoet.com. And there they can access and download some of the poems and to listen to some of the recitals. We're now working on the audio version of The Flames of Love before the next volume of the written trilogy comes out. And there's a group of people that I'm now interacting with on a regular basis, sending updates about forthcoming poems and some unpublished poems which I'm sharing. So if people like this type of poetry and feel there'll be value, and know others who might, you'd be honouring us to join us there.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much. So I know you've prepared a poem for today and ending on that. And I would like to end on that because I feel that that's really the entire purpose of today, is to fire up our February. And when we're talking about passion and love and intimacy and all of those things, tapping in. So I believe the gift of this broadcast is what you're about to share with us. And as soon as you finish, I'm just going to go ahead and end this broadcast, if that's okay with you. So if there's any parting words that you'd like to share at this moment before you share your poetry.
Just two, really. First, again, to thank you for the honour of inviting me to share the stage with you. And it has been an honour and a privilege. It's always a mystical journey when we share time together. Secondly, the poem that I'm selecting is called The Real You, and readers have been very gracious. Many of them have said that's their favourite poem. I'm going to recite it in honour of one particular friend of mine. She's a wonderful human being who supported my poetry like you have from the beginning. She's loved poetry from childhood due to her parents, and she's a great leader in business, a wonderful human being. But she has suffered great personal loss this year, and this is her favourite poem, and so I would like to recite it in honour of my friendship and adoration of her. The poem is called The Real You. Today, all seem to seek only love's pleasure, forgetting that our sacrifice remains its true measure. I would be willing to endure any trial to taste that truth beyond your smile. I would be willing to endure, forgive me. I would be willing to shed all my tears to give you faith enough to unveil all your fears. I would be willing to put my soul to death to unite with yours for just a single breath. I beg you, give me the chance to let you love anew, for my whole heart yearns for the real you.